In this video, we're going to show one of the more interesting things with the JDips well log modeler. That's how to create a shale volume curve. Now, there's several ways to create this. One is, obviously, if we had sand volume, we would create the shale volume as a value of 1 minus that. But generally we don't. And so we want to create this shale volume curve off of either the SP or the gamma curve. It's really left to the user, and it's a function of the quality of your data. When we do this, we come to custom curves, and we'll right mouse on that, and we're going to say add a custom curve. What parameter we're going to add? We're going to add the shale volume, and we'll hit OK. Now we need to know what method do we want to use to generate that. And so those are listed here. So like I said, you could, if you had a sand volume curve, we could do that, but we don't. But we could try to do it off of the gamma data. And I can look over here and see that we do have a gamma curve, nice, that we've already pulled in. And it requires this gamma curve. We're good to go. So when we hit OK, up pops our menu to define the sand and shale volume curve. Now there's a little bit of art involved in here, and there are a lot of theories on exactly how localized you want to get with defining this. But I'm going to zoom all so we can look at everything. So this is our entire well log. This is the gamma curve. Over on the right is currently empty. That's going to be our shale volume curve as it's generated. Now the theory behind this approach is that we're going to define an envelope, a bounding curve on the left-hand side, the low end of the gamma, and that's going to represent our condition of a 100% sand. Similarly, on the right-hand side, it's going to be our shale bounds, and that's going to determine as a function of depth where we have 100% shale. Now the actual curve data from the gamma in between those two bounds is going to tell us what is our volume of shale at every single depth increment. So I'm going to start off at a very broad level just to begin to show you how this works. We have the general view controls up here, and we can show and hide things if we want them for point of reference. But the key bits are up here where we're going to define our enveloping curves, one on the left for sand, one on the right for 100% shale. Now there's a cursor button. This is add a sand point, and this is delete a sand point, and that's delete the entire bounding curve if we want to start over. So what we're going to do is we're going to digitize on this screen new sand points, and don't worry, we can add, move them, change around very easily. So I'm going to click on this, and you'll notice that this shows up in a light brown. That's indicating, hey, let's move your eye to this side of the curve, and we're going to define points along there. Now, you don't want to come down and get every single little piece of data and define it as a point, but I'm going to zoom in first of all so that we can see where we are. So you see as we zoom in what this data looks like. And again, if you zoom in too much, you lose the essence of the curve. If you're zoomed too far away, you may miss something. So again, it's left up to the user. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to start adding points. You'll notice as I click on here, these points come up. And we're just putting sort of a wrapper around this. And I could dive down each one, or for the sake of getting this going, I'll zoom out a little bit more, and you can see as I add this curve. Now you can probably tell right away that there's a lot of individual judgment being used here. And this is pretty normal, but we can always, again, modify these points. So you notice as I continue to click, I'm generating this curve. There's no right or wrong answer with this. There may be a better answer than some, but it's not terribly exciting to watch me do this. I'm going to zoom back out, and I'm just going to plop the data in at a real high level. I'm going to zoom out a little bit more. And obviously I'm not catching all of the fluctuations in the data. But that's, again, left to the user. One more time, I'll zoom out, and I'm just going to do a real simple envelope here. Okay, so now this is done. I'll do a zoom out. So what I've done is you can see this wrapper here. That's my 100% sand bounds. I'm going to do a real quick one on, I'm going to do the same thing on the shale. Because right now, I know that what I'm telling is data points, anything to the left of this bounding curve is going to be 100% sand. Now I'm going to do the same thing for shale. And just for sake of time, I'm going to do it very quickly and add these data points in here. Now you'll notice as we created this, our shale volume curve has already been generated over there. And I'm not using a lot of art here, but I've defined it. So again, everything to the left of the green curve, anything in between is got some level of some volume of sand. If I zoom in, I can see how that works. And so I've got my bounding here for shale, my bound here for sand. Now if I want to move a point, I can click on the cursor up here, and I go grab any point and I can move it. And you notice as I move those points, my shale volume curve changes. Now this is where I could dive in and get into a little more detail as I come down here. Now let's say I've come to this area. I really need a point there. I need a shale point. So I'm going to click on add a shale point and just click it where I want it. If I want to move it, take it, and I move it. So it's pretty straightforward. And I'll just move this one out to the end. And I'll scroll down using my mouse wheel. Okay, so you can see how I've created this enveloping curve. Well, there's a nice spike that I probably want to get hold of. So I'll put a few points there. And I'll move this one. Okay, so now what we have is our shale volume curve. And so this is showing us, as I zoom in a little bit more, okay, the gray area is our shale and the yellow is our sand. And you can see this lithology key down here. We can always change this. So then once I hit accept, okay, I now have a shale volume curve that was produced from the gamma. And I can say show that curve and it will show it over here. Now that's the shale volume I can use for all of my synthetics. The cool thing about this is I have this, I can always go back to editing this, to adding, if I'm not really comfortable or I want to get somebody else's opinion, I can right mouse on the shale volume and hit properties and just hit OK, and it comes up and it preserves all of my data points. Okay, so if you open this project or you send it to a friend, colleague to take a look at, all of your selections are changed, and they can come in here and go, what's that guy's crazy. Let's put one right there, and let's put one right there. Boom, you notice that changes. So that's how we create a shale volume curve based off of the gamma. If all we had was a SP curve, we would do the exact same thing. If you have half of a log with good gamma and another part of the log with good SP, there's actually a way where you can merge those files together. And check out the documentation on merging SP and gamma files.